All right, in this video, we are covering a piece that I had no idea what to do, so I had to ask my Southerner friend Crypto here to explain to me what it was about.
Well, when you don't know, you ask.
All right, welcome to the Codex Cantina. There's a hint of truth behind that. I am Una.
And I am the memory Crypto, or am I?
I should have said Yankee Una. I would have felt more comfortable. Can we go back in time?
Or maybe you said Yankee. I don't remember.
Maybe you don't remember. The past is malleable.
Depending on what you want to remember.
Yes. All right, written in 1953, published in 1955, and A Good Man is Hard to Find. We have the classic A Late Encounter with the Enemy by Miss Flannery O'Connor. Last month, we fell in love with some of her writing, right? Well, I mean, I've known it before Crypto's first exposure to. Now, this piece, neither one of us have ever done before, and I had a hard time with it. I really did struggle pulling out what the meaning is. With that said, I grew up in Illinois, went to college in Ohio, now live in Indiana. I tour the Midwest like nobody's business, right?
You a Yankee.
I got that. I got Yankee blood through and through, and Crypto here goes to Civil War reenactments. He's a history teacher, lives in the South his whole life. So thank goodness we have him here to explain
Most of my life. Not all my life.
To explain what this piece is about.
This is set post-Civil War. A lady is going to graduate and get her degree, and she wants her grandfather there. And
it's worth pointing out the grandfather is 104, and I think the lady's 62.
Yeah. And she wants her grandfather there, and he's kind of this old curmudgeon, and he doesn't want to do anything. And as the story progresses, we learn a little bit more about her grandfather, who is General Sash. So General Sash is not actually a general. He was just a foot soldier in the Confederacy, and the only thing he enjoys in his ripe old age of 104 is kissing the pretty ladies. So you could say he's a hot-blooded man. And then she graduates, and spoiler, he dies before she graduates. And there's something to be said maybe about that at the end. And they go off and have a Coke. Like, it's the end of a commercial.
So can I explain from a Northerner's perspective? And it's not to say that if you're a Northerner, you couldn't pick up on this. Yeah. I was so confused. Like, I knew where the hooks were. Like, I read this line about the past. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, it didn't click for me right away. And I think you've got a really good interpretation of the story. And I think that comes down to also, I think you have some knowledge that I don't have, or at least some built-in experience that I don't have. Do you want to explain what you think the story is really about?
Yeah, so I want to point out those two things real quick before I go into some of my analysis. I've done some research on this, but I think that one, experience. I've lived in the South for most of my life, and I know the culture, and it's been bred into me. And I think that is something that is tremendously useful in understanding the point of this story. Second, I think being a history teacher lends itself, and maybe even third, a U.S. history teacher, and fourth, my bread and butter, the thing I love the most of studying in U.S. history is the Civil War. I get dressed up in the blues and the grays. I have a musket. I have a Henry repeater. I have brogans. I have all the gear. I think that lends itself to me understanding the story a little bit better than just your average reader.
Right. So stop teasing me. Dip me in. Let's do this.
So I think that there's a couple of ways to look at this story. I think that primarily the story is about memory, or more importantly, false memories. And that how we perceive things is how we view life. And that as a historian, we're looking at history from a certain perspective, right? We're building a puzzle, and we don't have all the pieces. And as I always say, we're using our historical imagination in order to recreate what has happened in the past. And what happens in the past is written by winners. That's a pretty old saying. And that's not necessarily true all the time. And in this story, the memory of the past is not written by the winners in the South. Okay? So, gonna quiz you here, real quick question, real tough question. Who wins the American Civil War?
The North.
The North.
Or should I say no one, because nobody really wins in war.
Yeah, and that's almost really true in this one. But no, the North wins. Slavery's abolished, and the South is forced to come back into the Union. And the North gets the glory. They get to rewrite history however they see fit. And the South doesn't have the glory. But what do they have? They still have their pride. And that's something that they hold on to. And that's something that we see General Sash hold on to, is his Southern pride. And we still see that today, the South holding on to our pride, holding on to our heritage, holding on to our manners, the way we treat people, our sayings and iced tea and barbecue. We still hold on to those for dear life because we didn't get what we wanted out of that war.
Let me hit you with a quote real quick.
Okay.
So Sally says about her father, she wanted the general at her graduation because she wanted to show what she stood for, or as she said, what was all behind her and was not behind them. And I think this is talking to your point where she's talking about the past, but I think the past can also represent the Civil War at this point in time, right?
Definitely.
Because the general is representing the Civil War, but it's a false memory, to your point that you just brought up.
Yes. So the general is the false memory of he was just a foot soldier, but he's remembering himself as this great general of the war and proving to the point that we can't trust our own memories and that we invent what we think we want. And I think that's maybe the heart of the story.
Right. There's another quote here. But she had a sense that she might be cheated out of her triumph because she so often was. Now, picture the Southerner saying that about all these Civil War references in here, that they were cheated out of their triumph because they so often were.
And from the point of view of the Southerner is we didn't win, we gave up. And the North didn't win, we gave up. And again, it's trying to rewrite it so that we feel better about it.
So she's kind of presenting the Southerner view.
Yes.
With the general representing the past, she's representing her view of the past, right? That's why she wants the general up on the stage to view the past with this specific lens. But who contradicts that? And that's what I think is the speaker of this event. Because the speaker says, if we forget our past, the speaker was saying, we won't remember our future. And it will be as well, we won't have one.
Yeah, and I think that's as the enemy of the South is their memory and its falsehoods, because they have this culture and they have these ideals that are bred into them. And as we've talked about before, that owning land and owning slaves and states' rights are so important to this culture. Those two are competing each other in this story. They're enemies of one another, I guess you could say.
So who is the enemy?
But I think so that brings up to one of my last points. I think the real enemy is time. As you grow older, you don't remember things as well. And one of my favorite ways to reference this is the Christmas Vacation movie, in that Chevy Chase is trying to recreate the perfect Christmas of his childhood. And in the movie, he finds these old film reels and he watches them and he realizes his Christmas as a kid was horrible. And you can't recreate that. And that our memories sometimes are perceived as false because you want to feel better about your past. Because if you think about your perfect Christmas or your perfect birthday, it really didn't happen like that. I promise you it didn't. You think it does, but it didn't. And so the true enemy is time breaking down your memories.
And then to your earlier point too, so history makes you face that. Your memory versus history, and whose is going to outlast the other. This is more philosophical, right?
Yeah.
And we have when the general, who represents a false past, loosely, right, faces the speaker, who is supposed to be bringing out the truth, who's supposed to be bringing out time, maybe. It's that moment of reckoning when someone does have to face it. We have this quote, the entire past opened up on him out of nowhere, and he felt his body riddled in 100 places with sharp stabs of pain. and he fell down, returning a curse for every hit.
Yeah. And then he dies. And so the truth kills you, but it sets you free as well, because the general was set free from the falsehoods that he had been perceiving for so long.
Have you thought much about, there's so many references to black, right? The black robe, the black procession, black spots that he saw. Have you thought much about what the black and the procession leading up to this moment of truth, this realization means?
I think as a Southerner, I think the symbolism here represents freedom, because the Civil War was fought about, again, the falsehood is that it's fought about states' rights, but it was the states' rights to what?
That's fine. I took it a different route.
Okay.
Or maybe I didn't. So here's what I took from it. And maybe I didn't go far enough with this. But it's at this moment when his brain's opening up, a black spot on his brain, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
It's after this point, he must face his past. He has his revelation that his past is his history, right? And at the same time, Sally, she idolized him for what reason?
For what he did.
Not because of what he did, right? Not because of what he did.
Yeah.
But because of what he represented.
Yeah.
And she was almost idolizing her heritage, the Southern. She idolized the Southern view. She didn't idolize what America became or what we accomplished. She idolized the Southern views, and that's why she wanted him on the stage. So at this point in time, Sally was forced to thus also face her idolization of the past, of her heritage, in a sense too, that at the same time, when both of these are faced with the truth, the speaker, they have to face the past, basically.
And I think too that Sally is drawn into the falsehoods of the general's memories, and I think that's the point that we will believe each other's lies because we love one another.
Well, and lies is interesting too, because I think why I struggled so hard with this to get a cohesive view is I was so stuck on our first interpretation with a good man is hard to find. Please check out that video if you haven't, but it is all about the Roman Catholic judgment view.
Yeah.
And I kept taking black to represent sin, to represent this was this man's judgment day. And I just couldn't get a cohesive view of how that included the Civil War, how that included your past and stuff like that. So I really like what you came up here with this story.
Yeah, to me, I think that the black represents freedom in reference to slavery. And again, maybe she was doing that. She is in Flannery because she's a Southern woman. I think that would be a subtle way of doing it. And I think that ultimately she's using this story to tell how history unfolds and how sometimes we don't know how it unfolds because we weren't there.
Right.
And
right.
This is a way of saying that we'll never know. And like at the end of the story, Sally doesn't know that he's dead. And they just keep on going. They keep on trucking. And they're living literally another lie and convincing themselves that the general made it. And that he made through the ceremony and saw her and was proud of her when it didn't happen that way. And she will remember it the rest of her life that way.
But now he's up in heaven with two pretty angels on each arm. Oh, yeah, baby.
Yeah.
I liked him. He cracked me up with some of his lines, like the 5 feet 4 inches of pure gamecock.
No, yeah. No, as deep as this story is and as kind of controversial as you could see, not as controversial as her other stories that Flannery wrote, but I still think that this one, that sticking point of Northern, Southern, and who won and what was the war really over, I mean, that still resonates with a lot of people. Maybe so not in the North, but it still does here in the South, where, many people still, have their heritage battle flags flying around with their trucks and out in their lawns. And and there's something to be said about that, of holding on to those falsities.
Yeah, and I think that's why I got stuck, because I was stuck on the religious view of like, okay, you never thought you'd have to face your past. I'm like, okay, does that have to deal with judgment? And And it felt incomplete with the Civil War and a lot of the other parts that you brought up. So I do really, while I can see the judgment and the religious view of this, I really like your interpretation with the South having a hard time letting go of, they didn't lose, they gave up, right? It's very subtle, but it's beautiful.
And again, there's people who still believe the South will rise again, and it's just, that's, ludicrous thought. But some people think that because of how they've been taught of mismemories from their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents.
Let's jump to ratings, my friend.
Okay.
I want you to go first because this is your toe jam. This is
yeah.
This is your space.
Yeah. No, I can't go first.
I wanted to drink a beer. You're cutting off my drink of beer. That was my excuse.
All right, I'm gonna steal your thunder then. I'm gonna steal your thunder.
All right, hit me. Hit me, lightning, because lightning always goes before thunder.
10.
10?
Yep.
Back up. Back the F up. You gave Harrison Bergeron a 9.5.
Yes.
Mathematically, I'm no genius, but I just heard you say this is your new favorite short story of all time.
We have made history here today. See what I did?
I will never forget that you said that. All right, yeah. I'm going to go with an 8.5 because I'm a dirty Yankee and I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to come to your level on this one. So
that's okay. No, I think this is my new favorite short story. I've read it.
Wow.
So I think you assigned this to me a week and a half ago.
Assigned?
Remember, you're the evil...
I'm the scheduler.
I've read it 4 times.
Wow.
I've read it 4 times. Yeah.
Wow.
So wow. I absolutely love this story. And again, it was about my favorite time in history. And I read it and I read it and I read it. And again, it's funny and it's insightful. And it didn't have the futuristic stuff that I love, like in the other stories that I said I really enjoyed. But it had something I like more than the futuristic stuff. History. I'm a history teacher. And it talked about the Civil War, my favorite time in history. So I geeked out over that. And Flannery, you are my new favorite.
Yeah, do the Tim Tebow, like the kiss up to the sky.
I dabbed.
All right, guys. If you enjoy literature breakdowns like this, please consider subscribing. Crypto will be here every week whenever we do a Civil War story, at least, and he will be on time. Una out.
Peace.